We're chatting with Bruce Fenton. He is actually the president of Atlantic Financial Inc., an independent capital management firm focusing on global investing, particularly in China and other emerging markets. And how do you feel about John Madden retiring, by the way, Bruce? Is that disturbing to you at all, or?
Not really. I think he's had a great career. Good for him. I hope he has a wonderful retirement.
Yeah, I understand in retirement what he's going to do is he's going to hop in that motorhome and tour the country.
Yeah, good.
Sounds a lot like his job, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about GM, because this, before the break, I made mention of the fact that, and somebody the other day, I can't remember if it was Stuart Varney or Neil Cavuto or somebody, edited together all of these different politician types saying, well, clearly, we don't think bankruptcy is an option. Bankruptcy is not an option. Bankruptcy is not an option. You had Obama. You had Chuck Schumer. You had basically anybody who's ever said it. They ran it down the line, and then at the end it was like, well, I guess we're just going to go with bankruptcy then. It's funny to me that they decided that there's just no way that we, and I think like you, were sitting around going, why is bankruptcy not an option? Why not? Why do you keep saying it's not an option? Why can't it be an option? Did anybody ever give you an answer on that?
No, I've never heard one. That's what bankruptcy exists for. Maybe they're starting to listen to these grassroots efforts, which, by the way, are not just Republican. It's Republicans and Democrats that are against this bailout, and maybe they're starting to listen to the citizens who are outraged.
It could be. I certainly hope so, because it made no sense to me whatsoever, especially when you realize that a huge amount of the burden, and I don't care what anybody says, a huge amount of the burden comes from the fact that GM is paying, a lot of retired workers, paying them a huge amount of money and giving them great medical benefits, and they're paying a huge amount to current auto workers. And, you can't pay a guy $100,000 a year to tighten 3 bolts in a trunk as the car goes by and expect that to be something that's going to be cost effective in the marketplace. That's why Toyota and Honda have a lower cost of production, and GM has a higher cost of production. Obviously, if you declare bankruptcy, then these guys can go back to the unions and say, you're going to have to make some concessions, we got to rework our deals or whatever. Without it, well, that's just like giving bonuses, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the people that are working at the auto companies are the ones who are hurt by having the whole industry suffer. And in capitalism, what you do is you look at, if your business is failing, you look at what can I do to make it succeed. It's pretty simple stuff, but somehow Congress seems to forget it, or maybe they never knew to begin with. And
I think the competition point that you brought up earlier is a huge one for me, because you are basically subsidizing failure when you go in and you say, here, why don't you go ahead and take some of these taxpayer dollars so that you can stay in business. You're saying what you did is perfectly okay with us. Now, we may, with our mouths, we may say, now, don't do that again. But the fact is, what we're essentially saying with our hands is, you can go ahead and screw up and we'll continue to bail you out. What is the cost now of having given GM $13 billion and now allowing them to declare bankruptcy? Would it not have been preferable to just have them declare bankruptcy originally?
It would have been preferable to not give a penny to any of these companies, and I'd gladly debate anybody who says otherwise, because it just doesn't make any sense. Any of the money we gave to GM or any of the financials is money that is wasted money.
I'm sure if I were to play devil's advocate, and let's just say I'm taking the leftist side and saying that bailouts are a brilliant concept, I would say, well, you're saying that now we're in a position where we actually are a little bit comfy. You've got Citigroup that's actually showing a profit. You've got some others that are stepping out and saying that they've made a couple of $1 billion in the first quarter of this year, and that might not have happened had it not been for the bailout money. Back then, you got to remember, everything was going on. The walls were crashing down around us, and the bailout may have been nothing more than a giant symbol to stem the bleeding and to stop the panic. What would you say to that?
Well, I'd say, if your neighbor continually does stupid things again and again and again and keeps asking you for money, and you give your neighbor $100,000 every month, and then after 6 or 7 months of it, your neighbor comes back and says, hey, great news, Richard, I just made $2,000. Are you going to be happy about it? Or are you going to maybe say, should I give him $100,000 again? And where's the rest of my $100,000? And what did I get for it? It's a much bigger issue. These small profits that are being reported are nothing close to what we've given these companies.
Well, the number that always sticks in my head is that $66 billion that AIG lost in the last quarter of last year.
Right. I mean, they'd have to make $2 billion a year profit for the next 50 years just to pay two-thirds of what they owe the taxpayer.
Yeah. I mean,
And
66
that assumes that they're going to give all the profit to the taxpayer. Yeah, right.
As a businessman, you, of course, understand fully how the insurance game works. To have lost $66 billion in one quarter, you've got to be astronomically bad at it.
Yeah, it's pretty astounding. But if you look at the things that companies like GM are doing, they're completely isolated. They're flying around on private jets and things like that. I mean, they're just that's not what you do when you're losing money. I mean, you go to any entrepreneur, and most people in America are struggling right now. That's the particularly frustrating thing about this. There's a lot of smart companies who did all the right things, didn't make stupid decisions, and those entrepreneurs aren't flying around on jets and paying themselves giant salaries. They're out there making cuts and doing the smart things. Tesla Motors is this little company that's trying to make energy efficient automobiles, and they're doing all the things you're supposed to do when you're in a capitalist business.
Yeah.
And again, they've got to compete against a competitor 10 times their size with free government money. Very difficult.
Well, I agree. I have no problem with GM executives flying around on private jets and making the wrong decisions and continuing to try to sell SUVs in a small car market or vice versa. That's perfectly okay with me, as long as they're not taking any taxpayer dollars.
Exactly. And yeah, don't get me wrong when I complain about bonuses and things like that. You can't get any more capitalist than owning an investment firm. I say, if it's your money and your business, more power to you. You want to take $1 billion salary, great, just not with my nickel and your nickel.
Yeah, and I think that's where the American people get in trouble, and where the American government is now getting into trouble as well, because some of these banks, and let's be fair about this, you've got Goldman Sachs, you've got Chase Morgan, or JP Morgan Chase. These guys want to give the money back. As a matter of fact, Chase didn't even use any of the money. They were forced to take it, the Obama administration trying to play this big shell game and going, well, we don't want the American people to think that you're strong and these guys over here are weak, so you take some, and we'll give these guys some, and they'll think, oh, everybody's weak. And JP Morgan was like, you got to be out of your mind. We don't want your money. Get it out of here.
Yeah,
they were forced to take it, and now they're trying to give it back, and the government's going, no, you can't give it back.
Yeah, and Goldman Sachs has announced that they're trying to give some back as well. So
yeah, what is going on there? I mean, I got to figure it's that boondoggle, it's that shell game with the Obama administration saying, well, if you give the money back, that makes these guys who don't give the money back look bad. Hey, the American people, if we're going to invest in these companies, we need to know which ones are good and which ones are bad, don't we?
Absolutely. We need to know what we're getting for it. I mean, it's very simple. It's our money. We have to remember that as Americans. This is our money, and it's not that different from if somebody comes to you and says, hey, give me $100,000, you want to know where that goes. You want to know what you're getting for it, and is it a good idea? Well, what am I giving you? And it's about $9,000 per American per bailout, for the major bailouts. So very realistic for, say, to every listener who's an American of yours, it's $9,000. What are you getting for it? Well, I'm getting toxic debt. Well, is that a good idea?
That sounds like a plan.
Do I really want to buy something called toxic debt?
As I said the other day, don't buy toxic anything ever, people. Thank you very much. Bruce Fenton, we appreciate your time. Love to have you back on when the worm turns and we have something else to talk about. There's Bruce Fenton here on Richard Dixon on GCN. Stick around. We'll be right back.